He called me Mom. Not the rushed, half-distracted way he did when asking for rent money. Not the cold, distant tone he adopted after his marriage fell apart. No, this time it was soft. Too soft. So soft it didn't feel real. The moment I hung up the phone, a chill crawled up my spine. I stared out the window, past the fading light. And suddenly every part of me, the mother, the grandmother, the woman who'd spent 70 years listening closely, knew something was terribly wrong. It wasn't the words. It was the silence between them. The kind of silence that screams. That was 2 days before the trip. The one that was supposed to be about reconnecting. The one that was supposed to be about family and healing and fishing with Ellie. But what I found hidden in that tackle box? It shattered everything I thought I knew about my son. Before we go on, tell me, where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story is reaching. Drop your location in the comments. My name is Virginia Henderson, and I am 68 years old. I live in a quiet suburb of Albany, New York, in the same house where my husband and I raised our children, and where the magnolia tree outside still blooms every spring, no matter what happens inside these walls. People have always said I'm the kind of woman who holds things together. The bills, the birthdays, the silences. I've been the listener, the fixer, the one who says, "We'll get through it," even when my voice trembles just a little at the end. After 50 years of marriage, my life had become made of small, peaceful routines. Morning coffee, crossword puzzles, tending to the garden, phone calls from my grown children that always ended with "Love you, Mom," right before the line went quiet. I thought I knew who I was. A mother, a wife, a grandmother. Someone who had built an honest life, steady and safe. A woman who believed that love, when given freely, would always be returned. But love is complicated. And sometimes, the people you trust the most are the ones who teach you what fear truly feels like. I didn't know it then, but everything I believed about family, about loyalty, about safety itself, was about to be tested in ways I could never have imagined. I have always believed that a quiet house tells the truth about the people who live in it. Mine is a small, blue house tucked beneath a magnolia that remembers more summers than I do. The porch boards are soft under my slippers. The swing creaks in a friendly way when the afternoon finds it. Inside, every book knows where it belongs. I taught them that. 40 years as a librarian will do that to a woman. Even in retirement, I shelve my own life like a careful archive. Tea tins aligned, letters tied with ribbon, photographs facing the light but not too much of it. Order calms me. Order makes honest company. In the morning, I move through a ritual so gentle it barely disturbs the dust. Kettle. 2 slices of toast. Honey on the second one because Walter liked it that way. And I still do things for him, even though he is not here to tease me about the sticky fingers. I say his name aloud when the house feels too still. Walter. The sound rounds out the corners. My son's name enters the room differently. Alan, harder consonants. He used to run through this kitchen with his socks half off, his arms open to catch the air, his laughter a kind of weather. I remember him like that more easily than I remember the man he is now. That is not an accusation. It is simply the truth a quiet house tells. My granddaughter Ellie visits most weekends. 8 years old and already a reader. She mouths the words when she thinks I am not watching. I keep a little stack of chapter books by the window for her. Stories about brave girls and gentle creatures and maps that always, somehow, lead you home. She pulls her knees under herself on the couch and disappears into those pages with a sigh that makes me smile into my teacup. When she reads, the air sweetens. When she leaves, it sours for an hour. And then it is okay again. I have 2 children, but only one lives close by. My daughter, Margaret, moved to Colorado after college. She phones on Sundays. We talk about the mountains and the dry air and the way distance can be both a mercy and a wound. She loves me with a steady hand. she worries without insisting. "Mom," she says, "do not set yourself on fire to keep anyone warm. I say I will be careful. I always mean it when I say it. Alan stayed. He married young, as I did. He became a father. He worked at the auto plant, the one that smells like hot metal and hope. For years, he rose before dawn, kissed his wife, kissed his baby, kissed me on the forehead when he dropped Ellie off for the day. He kept regular hours like a hymn. And then the plant downsized. And then the hours fell apart. When a man's work unthreads, the rest of his life tries to stitch around the hole. Sometimes it holds. Sometimes it does not. Alan searched. He did odd jobs. He promised new interviews, better promises, brighter tomorrows. He said the right words until the right words grew tired. Divorce came like a storm that did not announce itself, and when it passed, the house he rented became smaller and the sound of his voice changed shape. Gratitude began to leave sentences early. I noticed it, the way a mother notices that her child is not quite himself, and I told myself that change is weather. Weather passes. I did what mothers do. I brought groceries. I paid the electric. I kept my wallet where my mouth was when I said, "We are family." The first time I handed him a check, he cried. He hugged me so tightly that I could smell the old shampoo he never stopped buying, the kind his father used. "Just until I am back on my feet," he said. "I will pay you back." The second time I helped, he did not cry. He said thank you quickly and kept talking about a lead. The third time, he texted me a list of bills. By the fourth, I had memorized due dates that were not mine. I did not mark an exact day when helping became a habit. Habits, like ivy, take the shape of what they climb. They can beautify a wall. They can also crack it. On my calendar, I wrote things like Ellie dentist and AC filter and Alan's rent in the same blue ink. If you had looked at my life from above, it would have appeared tidy. Lines connected to boxes. Boxes connected to weeks. Weeks connected to a year that looked full enough to feel like a purpose. When Ellie stayed with me, she helped me cook. She preferred to stand on a stool and command the mixing bowl like a ship captain. "Gentle," I would say, and she would laugh and whirl the spoon faster until flour kissed both our noses. At night, she would press her palm flat against her cheek and say, "Grandma, tell me the story of when Daddy was little." And I would. I would tell her about a boy who built forts and climbed trees and collected bottle caps like treasure. I would tell her about the time he fed a stray dog from his own bowl and did not mind that his macaroni went cold. The story soothed both of us. We would fall asleep on the couch, a book open like a tent between us. There were other nights. Nights when the phone lit up late and Alan's voice came through hunched and hard. "They cut my hours again. The car will not start. Amber is being impossible." He used to call his ex-wife by her name. After a while, he started calling her she. After another while, he did not call at all. He sent messages that were a string of numbers. I paid what I could. I told myself this is not forever. I told myself he is a good man having a hard time. And good men having a hard time deserve a soft place to land. The first time I noticed his tone, really noticed it, I was standing in the produce aisle holding a head of lettuce like a question mark. He said, "Mom, you know I would not ask if it was not serious." His voice did not go down at the end the way it used to. It stayed flat. It stayed there even when I said, "Of course, darling." I hung up, put the lettuce back, and wondered when obligation had learned to dress as love. Margaret heard it too. On a Sunday call, she let a pause bloom between my sentences, and then she said, "How much are you paying for Alan's life each month?" I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was a door I had not wanted to open. I gave her a number. It did not sound like a number a retired librarian should be saying out loud. She was quiet. "Mom," she said, "you are kind. You are not a bank." I do not mind being called kind. It is a word like a quilt. It covers a lot of things. But quilts can also hide the shape of what is underneath. I thought about that as I washed the breakfast dishes while Ellie sang to herself in the next room. Her voice lifted the last soap bubble and held it there. I wanted that sound to be the only currency that mattered. When Alan said Ellie was being bullied at school, my hands went still in the dishwater. He sounded urgent. He sounded like a father. "Kids can be cruel," he said. "The teachers do not care. The classes are huge." He had a solution ready. There was a private academy with small classes and excellent policies. All we needed was tuition for the remainder of this term, and then just a slightly higher amount each year after. The numbers did not fit in my mouth. I rolled them around like stones and they did not get smoother. I went to the park with Ellie that afternoon. She climbed, she shouted, she slid. She did not look like a child afraid to go to school. She talked about a girl named Jayla who likes horses, and a teacher who says her name like it is something delicious. When I asked gently whether anyone had been unkind, she shrugged and tied her shoe very carefully, which is what some children do when they are telling you the truth without saying it. "School is fine," she said. Then she poked my arm and added, "Can we make pancakes for dinner?" We did. We burned the first one on purpose because that is the law. I told Alan I wanted to meet with the teacher. I told him I wanted to explore options. I said we could look into the school's programs for conflict and kindness. The line went cold in a way I could feel in my teeth. "So, you are saying no," he said. I said, "I am saying not yet. There is a difference." He did not hear it. Or he did and did not like it. After that, the weekends grew thin. Family dinners vanished the way a trail disappears when the grass grows back over it. When I phoned to ask for Ellie on a Saturday morning, he said, "We are busy." He said it again the next Saturday. And the next. When I ran into them at the grocery store, Ellie ran at me like happiness on legs. Amber called her back with a voice that had salt in it. "We need to go." She did not look at me. I looked at the cereal boxes until the aisle had fewer eyes in it. I tried not to count the days. Counting is a librarian's reflex. We count everything. I put my hands under the faucet and watched the water move. I took the long way to the mailbox. I brought in the lilies before the sun could bruise them. I told myself winter was ending. Spring would make better decisions. Then the calls slowed. Then they stopped. Silence can be a discipline. It can also be a theater trick. The quiet grew a new kind of edge. Even the magnolia seemed to hold its breath. When Alan called again, his voice had a shine to it, as if he had polished it with good intentions. He wanted to make it right, he said. He had been stressed. He had been unkind. He wanted a weekend to reset, all of us together, the way it used to be. Fishing at a cabin near the Alabama coast. Fresh air. Ellie needed time with me. He needed time with me. He said the words slowly, like someone stepping over stones in a creek. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to press that word into his palm like a blessing. But there was a small sound inside me, a hinge I did not recognize. It whispered, "Wait." I asked questions. Who owned the cabin? What roads were best? What to pack? He had answers. He laughed the way he used to laugh. "Mom," he said, soft as a secret. "This will be good for us." After we settled the plan, he added a small thing, almost as an afterthought. "Could you bring the old tackle box from the garage?" he asked. "Do not open it, though. I put something for Ellie's birthday in there. I want it to be a surprise." I looked toward the garage even though I was still on the phone. The tackle box was red once. Time had faded it into a sad pink. Walter had kept his lures in it, little jeweled tricks that glowed underwater. He used to show them to Ellie like they were museum pieces. She preferred the way the box snapped shut. She liked the sound. "Of course," I said. "I will bring it." My voice was calm, as if my voice did not belong to me. After we hung up, the house went quiet in a way it had not been quiet before. Not empty. Not lonely. Just listening. I went to the garage. I touched the tackle box. I did not open it. I placed it near the door so I would not forget in the morning. When I came back inside, the kettle clicked itself off, though I could not remember turning it on. That night I dreamed of Walter. He stood in the doorway in his good shirt with the sleeves rolled and one hand on his hip, smiling the way he smiled when he was proud of me for something small, like remembering to buy his favorite jam. He did not speak. He lifted his chin the way he did when he wanted me to notice something I had missed. I woke up before I could name it. The room felt very still. The magnolia scraped the window like a careful fingernail. I made tea. I watched the sky unroll itself. I told the house what I always tell it when I do not know what comes next. "We will proceed," I said. "Has a loved one's tone ever changed in a way your heart recognized before your mind did? Share, if you can. This community listens." The morning of the trip came with a sky that pretended to be innocent. I remember thinking how beautiful everything looked, and how wrong it felt that such beauty could coexist with the unease curling in my chest. Alan arrived an hour later than planned. He was smiling, but his eyes were restless. Ellie ran ahead of him with her backpack bouncing. She hugged me tight, the kind of hug that still smelled of sleep and crayons. "Grandma, we're going to see the ocean," she said, voice bubbling with joy. "Yes, my love, we are," I answered, though my voice didn't match hers. I was already watching Alan's hands as he loaded the trunk, careful, deliberate, too careful. He looked thinner than I remembered. The weight loss didn't look healthy. It looked hungry. "Mom," he said, wiping his palms on his jeans. "Thank you for bringing the tackle box. It means a lot." "Of course," I replied. "It's in the back, where you said." "Good. Don't open it, okay?" He smiled too widely. "You'll ruin the surprise." That word again, surprise. It sat in the air like a bad smell. We set off in separate cars, me and Ellie in the van, Alan following behind in his sedan. The road stretched ahead like a promise that didn't quite keep itself. Ellie sang softly to a song on the radio, making up her own words halfway through. Her laughter helped me breathe again. For the first hour, things almost felt normal. The hum of the highway, the soft beat of the wipers brushing away the morning drizzle, the smell of Ellie's strawberry shampoo drifting forward from the back seat. I began to believe I had been wrong about the strange tone in Alan's voice, that I was just being an old woman worrying too much. Then my phone buzzed. Alan's name flashed on the screen. I pressed the answer button on speaker. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. You got the box, right?" "Yes, Alan, it's safe." "Good. You didn't move anything around in it, did you?" I frowned. "No. Why would I?" "Just making sure," he said, then hesitated. "They're really strict at the border these days. Just be careful." My grip on the steering wheel tightened. "Alan, what's going on?" He chuckled. "Nothing, Mom. You worry too much. I love you, okay? I love you so much." The way he said it, soft, careful, final. My heart skipped. I forced myself to smile at Ellie through the mirror. "I love you too, sweetheart," I murmured, though it wasn't her I was answering. I hung up and felt something shift in the air. Even the road seemed quieter. The next few miles passed in silence, except for Ellie humming under her breath. At a gas station just past Montgomery, I pulled over. "Stretch your legs, honey," I told her. She ran off toward a vending machine, clutching a dollar bill. I walked to the back of the van. The tackle box sat there like an accusation. I touched it. The latch was cold. My stomach turned. "Don't open it," I whispered to myself. But the whisper wasn't strong enough to drown out the instinct screaming inside me. I lifted the lid. Under the layer of old fishing lures and tangled line were small, vacuum-sealed packages wrapped in brown plastic. My mind didn't want to name what they were, but my body already knew. I slammed the lid shut and stumbled backward. My breath came short and sharp. "Grandma?" Ellie called. Her small voice yanked me back to the present. I forced a smile, waved her over, and said, "Let's get some water for the road." As we drove back onto the highway, I tried to think, tried to reason. But the pieces were already falling into place. Alan's strange calm, the urgency, the insistence on the box, the softness in his voice. It wasn't love I'd heard. It was guilt. I didn't know how to confront him yet, or how to keep Ellie safe. But one thing was suddenly clear. I would not cross that border. The plan that had once sounded like a healing family trip had turned into something darker, something that might destroy us all. Have you ever felt that sharp whisper in your chest? The one that tells you something is wrong even when everything looks fine? Share your moment of instinct below. It might help someone else listen to theirs. The rest of that drive was a blur of asphalt and heartbeat. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, not at the road, but at my granddaughter's reflection, her innocent face framed by the soft glow of morning light. She was humming to herself, unaware that the world beneath her feet had shifted. I wanted to believe this was some dreadful misunderstanding, that the box didn't contain what my gut already knew it did. But mothers, real mothers, know the truth long before anyone speaks it. By the time I reached the next rest stop, I had already decided to turn back. I rehearsed excuses in my head. The car overheating, a sudden illness, anything to stop us from going farther south. But just as I reached for my phone to call Alan, it rang first. "Mom," he said. His voice was strange, too light, like a man trying to sound casual while walking a tightrope. "Everything okay?" I stared at the road ahead, the horizon blurred by heat. "We're fine," I said carefully. "Just stopped for gas." "You didn't open the box, did you?" I swallowed hard. "No, Alan." A pause. Long. Then softly. "Good. I love you, Mom." There it was again, that awful softness, like a goodbye disguised as affection. When I hung up, the tears came without warning. Not loud, just quiet streaks down my cheeks that left salt on my lips. I wasn't crying because of what I'd found. I was crying because I already understood the meaning of it. My son had chosen his desperation over my life. That realization burned through me like a fever. I wiped my face, looked back at Ellie, and said, "Sweetheart, we're taking a little detour, okay? Grandma forgot something important at home." She nodded easily. "That's okay. Can we get ice cream on the way back?" I smiled, a hollow, trembling smile. "Of course we can." As I steered the van toward the next exit, I noticed Alan's car in my side mirror. He was still behind us, keeping distance, watching. My stomach turned. The highway stretched out like a trap laid open. I tightened my hands around the wheel until my knuckles went white. The air grew heavier the closer we got to the exit. Ellie had fallen asleep, her head resting against the window. The radio played softly, an old country song Walter used to hum when we went camping. The memory struck me like a knife made of love. I could almost hear his voice, the slow drawl, the gentle wisdom in it. "You can't fix a man who won't stop breaking himself, Ginny." I whispered, "I know, Walt. I know." When I finally took the exit, Alan followed. My pulse jumped. I turned onto a narrow service road, pretending I needed a bathroom break. My hands trembled as I parked the van beside a line of pines. I could see Alan's car stop behind us. The engine idled. I got out, careful not to wake Ellie. The cicadas screamed in the trees. My heart matched their rhythm. Alan rolled down his window. "Everything okay, Mom?" he called, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Yes," I lied. "Ellie's asleep, just needed some air." He nodded, but his eyes darted to the back of the van. I could see the question in them. Did she look? I wanted to scream, to ask him how he could look at me, his mother, the woman who gave him life, and even imagine doing this. But I said nothing, because silence sometimes is the only weapon left to those who've been betrayed by love. I walked back to the driver's side, heart pounding, and climbed in. Alan lingered a moment longer, then slowly pulled away, merging back onto the highway. He didn't know yet that I had no intention of following. When his car disappeared from view, I sat there for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. My breath was shallow, my vision blurred. The tackle box sat behind me, silent, monstrous. I thought of how many years I'd spent patching up Alan's life, paying his debts, calming his storms, pretending that sacrifice could heal rot. And this was where it led, a border crossing with drugs hidden under my granddaughter's toys. For the first time in my life, I felt something stronger than love for my son, something ancient and feral, the instinct to protect. I turned the key and headed north. It wasn't until Ellie stirred awake that I realized my hands were shaking on the wheel. "Are we almost there?" she mumbled. "Almost," I whispered. "We're almost home." Home. The word tasted like safety, like truth. The miles blurred behind us. My mind was already planning. I would go straight to the police. But first I needed proof. Evidence that it was Alan's doing. I needed to protect Ellie from the shadow her father had become. I needed to protect myself from the guilt that was already clawing at my chest. As we crossed back into familiar roads, the sun began to set. Long orange light spilled across the windshield, and I caught sight of my reflection. Older, harder, somehow steadier. I didn't recognize that woman, but I trusted her. By the time we reached my driveway, the first stars had appeared. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat in silence while Ellie stretched and yawned. "You okay, Grandma?" she asked, her little voice warm and sleepy. "Yes, sweetheart," I said. "I'm okay now." But I wasn't okay, not yet. I was about to walk into the longest night of my life. Have you ever reached a point where fear and love pulled you in opposite directions? How did you choose? Share your thoughts below. Your story might help someone find their strength. When I woke up the next morning, I hadn't truly slept. The clock on the nightstand blinked a stubborn red 4:03 a.m., and the air in my bedroom felt heavier than it should have. Somewhere outside, a mourning dove called, slow, hollow, and endless. Ellie was still asleep down the hall, wrapped up in her quilt like a secret. I stood in the doorway for a long while just watching her breathe. Every soft inhale was proof that I'd done something right, even if everything else in my life felt wrong. The memories of the day before replayed like an old film reel behind my eyes. Alan's smile that didn't reach his eyes, the way he said he loved me, the weight of that tackle box. I could still feel the metal handle pressing into my palm, cold and deceitful. My instincts had saved us, but now came the part I dreaded most, the reckoning. I went to the kitchen and made coffee I didn't drink. The house smelled of peace and betrayal, both things I'd grown used to. The photos on the wall stared down at me. Walter holding baby Alan in his arms, both of them laughing at something out of frame. That picture had survived 45 years of life. Hurricanes, Christmas parties, grief. Now it felt like a stranger. I sat at the table and whispered into the quiet, "What happened to our boy, Walt?" The silence answered me the way it always did, patient, waiting. By 7, I decided I couldn't hide from the truth any longer. I opened the garage door and stared at the red tackle box sitting on my workbench. Morning light slanted through the blinds, striping it with gold and shadow. It looked almost innocent again. I opened it slowly, half hoping the drugs had disappeared overnight. Of course they hadn't. The brown packages were still there, stacked neatly like sin disguised as order. I forced myself to touch one. It was solid, tightly wrapped, heavier than I remembered. The weight of it made something inside me collapse. I wasn't naive. I'd seen enough in life to know what I was holding. Cocaine, heroin, I didn't know which, and it didn't matter. Either one could have destroyed me, destroyed Ellie. Alan had put it in my hands as if it were nothing, as if my love were a weapon he could turn against me. My first thought was to drive straight to the police. My second was to burn it all. But then Ellie's laughter drifted down the hall, soft, pure, the only clean sound left in my life. I couldn't risk her seeing any of this. Not yet. Instead, I put the box back on the workbench, covered it with an old towel, and locked the garage door. For the rest of the day, I moved like a ghost. I made pancakes for Ellie and smiled through the ache. We painted birdhouses together on the porch, her chatter filling the space where my thoughts tried to crawl. She told me about a friend named Jayla and how they planned to start a detective club when school resumed. The irony nearly broke me. In the afternoon, she went to her room to draw, and I finally allowed myself to unravel. I sat at the kitchen table with Walter's old notepad and made a list, because that's what librarians do when chaos knocks. We catalog it. I wrote down everything. The trip, Alan's calls, his strange tone, the tackle box, the drugs. Each word felt like a betrayal and a confession at once. When I finished, I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, a kind man named Mr. Dillard, who'd handled Walter's estate years ago. His voice was soft but alert, the kind of tone reserved for emergencies. I told him everything. There was a long silence when I finished. Then he said, "Mrs. Cole, listen carefully. Do not confront your son yet. Keep the box sealed. We'll contact the authorities quietly. But your priority right now is that little girl." "I know," I whispered. I just wanted to believe he could still be saved. "Sometimes," he said gently, "saving them means stopping them." When I hung up, I felt both relieved and hollow. There was a strange comfort in giving the nightmare a name, but also a sorrow that clung to my ribs. I kept thinking about Alan as a little boy, the way he'd run barefoot in the yard, the way he'd call me mama when he skinned his knees. I tried to match that child to the man who'd hidden poison in my trunk, and I couldn't. That night, as I tucked Ellie into bed, she looked up at me with her big, curious eyes. "Grandma," she said, "Daddy texted me. He said we're still going to the lake next weekend." I froze. My heart started pounding. "Did he?" She nodded. "He said it'll be just us this time, but he told me not to tell you yet." The room tilted. My stomach turned cold. Alan wasn't done. He was planning something else, and this time he meant to take her without me knowing. I kissed her forehead and smiled as best I could. "Don't you worry about that, sweetheart. Grandma's got it all handled." She smiled, trusting, and rolled onto her side, drifting into dreams. When I left her room, I went straight to the garage, opened the box one last time, and stared at it under the dim light. Then I picked up Walter's old camera from the shelf, took several pictures of the contents, and sealed it back up tight. I sent the images to Mr. Dillard's private email with a message, "Proof attached. I'll be ready when you are." Then I sat in my armchair and waited for morning. The next day came dressed in gray skies and heavy air. I took Ellie to school, kissed her on the forehead, and told her I'd pick her up early for ice cream. Then I drove straight to the sheriff's office. The deputy who took my report looked at me with disbelief when I told him what was in the tackle box. But when he opened it and saw for himself, the disbelief vanished. He called for his supervisor, and within minutes, my quiet morning turned into a storm of questions, photographs, and paperwork. I answered everything truthfully, keeping my voice steady even when my hands trembled. They assured me I'd done the right thing, that I'd saved not only myself, but possibly others. But there was no victory in it. Only grief. Because by handing that box over, I wasn't just turning in evidence, I was surrendering the last piece of faith I had in my son. As I left the station, I looked up at the sky. It had started to rain, slow, cold drops that felt like the earth itself was crying with me. I let it fall on my face, washing away nothing, but pretending to. That evening, when Ellie came home, she ran into my arms. I held her tighter than ever before, burying my face in her hair. She smelled of crayons and vanilla shampoo, innocence, safety, everything I still had left to protect. I didn't tell her what I'd done. I didn't tell her that the next few days would change everything. I just whispered, "We're safe now, my darling. We're safe." And for the first time in months, I almost believed it. Have you ever had to protect someone you love from another person you love? How did you carry both the love and the loss? Share your thoughts below. This community understands. The storm that night began without thunder, just wind, slow at first, then sharp enough to rattle the shutters. I sat in my living room with all the lights off, watching the branches sway under the porch light. Every sound felt amplified. The scrape of bark, the sigh of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator. My body was still, but my mind was running, sprinting through every terrible possibility. Alan was out there somewhere, and I knew him well enough to know he wouldn't just disappear quietly. I had called the police earlier that afternoon, told them everything, the drugs, the threats, the fear. They had promised to keep an eye on the house, but promises are just words until the blue lights show up. I didn't trust silence anymore. Silence had become a mask for danger. At 9:45, the phone rang. I froze. The sound sliced through the dark like a knife. Ellie stirred on the couch beside me, half asleep under her blanket fort. I snatched the phone before it could wake her. "Mom." Alan's voice, lower, rawer. I could hear the wind on his end, maybe the hum of a car engine. "Why'd you do it?" I gripped the receiver so tight my knuckles clicked. "Alan, where are you?" "You turned it in," he said. His voice was trembling, not with sadness, but with rage he was trying to keep under control. "You told them. The cops came to my house. You've ruined everything." "You ruined it," I whispered. "You used me." He let out a bitter laugh, sharp enough to make me flinch. "I used you? You raised me to be this way. You never let me fail. You always fixed it. Every time. You taught me that consequences were optional." That hit me harder than any curse could have, because he was right and wrong all at once. "Alan," I said softly, "come home. Turn yourself in. I'll help you." "No," he hissed. "You've done enough helping." Then his voice softened, too soft, like it did before the highway. "You always said you'd do anything for me, Mom. Anything." The line went dead. The wind howled outside, rain starting to lash against the glass. I looked through the curtain and saw a pair of headlights turn onto my street. Slow, crawling. My heart stopped. I reached for the lamp, but froze. If it was Alan, I didn't want him to know I was awake. The car idled by the curb for a full minute. I could make out a silhouette in the driver's seat, broad shoulders, head bowed. Then, as if sensing my gaze, the car rolled forward and disappeared into the dark. I didn't breathe again until the sound of the engine faded. That night, I sat in the hallway outside Ellie's room with a baseball bat across my lap. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. Every creak of the house felt alive, like the walls were waiting. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. At dawn, the storm had passed. The air smelled of wet earth and magnolia. I made Ellie breakfast and tried to hide the exhaustion from my face. "Grandma, why are your eyes red?" she asked. "Because I love you too much, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. "And sometimes love keeps you awake." She giggled, unaware of how true that was. After she left for school, I sat at the table staring at my phone, waiting for something. A call, a knock, a sign that this was over. But what came instead was worse. A text message. No name. Just a photo. The image showed the red tackle box, sitting open on a wooden table, empty. Beneath it, a message. You didn't destroy everything, Mom. Not yet. My breath caught in my throat. I forwarded it to the sheriff immediately. He promised to send a patrol car. By that afternoon, I was pacing by the window, heart hammering every time a car slowed outside. When the cruiser finally stopped in front of my house, 2 officers stepped out. I opened the door before they could knock. One of them, Officer Ramirez, met my eyes with that look cops have when the news is bad but inevitable. "Mrs. Cole," he said, "we got him." It took me a moment to process it. "Alive?" He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. He and his ex-wife were caught near the border. Same car, same route, same pattern. We found the remaining packages hidden in their spare tire compartment." I covered my mouth. Relief and grief collided like 2 storms inside my chest. "Was he armed?" I managed to ask. "No," Ramirez said. "He didn't resist. He just cried. Said he wanted to see his mom." I closed my eyes and turned away. I didn't want the image of him crying to replace the one I already had. The little boy who used to press dandelions into my palms and say, "For you, Mama, because you like sunshine." That night, after the officers left, I walked out to the porch. The sky was clear now, crisp and endless. Ellie was asleep inside. I sat on the steps, listening to the quiet hum of crickets, and felt the kind of exhaustion that lives deeper than bones. When my phone rang again, I almost didn't answer. But something made me lift it to my ear. "Mom!" Alan's voice came, small this time, trembling. "They're giving me one call." I said nothing. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "I just didn't know what else to do. They were threatening me, Mom. I thought if I could make one run, just one, it would fix everything." The sob that broke through his voice didn't sound like my son. It sounded like a stranger wearing his shape. "I know, Alan," I whispered, "but you nearly destroyed us both." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "Tell Ellie I love her." "I will. I'm sorry." The line clicked dead again. I sat there, staring at the phone in my hand, until the dawn started bleeding through the horizon. The world didn't end that night, but something in me did. Something that had kept hoping my son would come back whole. When I finally stood up, I looked toward the east, where the sky was turning gold. The magnolia leaves glittered in the early light. I took a breath, steady and full. I had survived. Ellie had survived. And somehow, even in the wreckage, that felt like a beginning. I wish I could tell you the house felt safe again the day after the arrest. It didn't. Safety doesn't arrive like a package left on the porch. It creeps in slowly, through small details you almost miss. The hum of the refrigerator sounds too loud. The hallway feels longer. You check the locks twice, 3 times, because even when your mind knows it's over, your hands still remember fear. Ellie woke early that morning. "Grandma, can we have cinnamon toast?" I said yes, 2 slices, extra cinnamon. She sat at the table with the cat under her chair, watching the window like a guard. I poured her milk. She chewed quietly for a while, then asked the question I wasn't ready for. "When is Daddy coming home?" "He has to be away for a while," I said softly. "Grown-ups made decisions, and there are consequences." She nodded, her little face pretending to understand. "Do consequences last forever?" "Some don't," I said. "Some teach us, some save us." That day became a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Lawyers, the sheriff, child services, the school counselor. No poetry, just logistics. I made a yellow folder labeled Ellie's Stability. Inside it, I kept a checklist. Bedtime at 8:30, homework at the table, no secrets. I called her school and explained enough for them to understand without breaking her privacy. The counselor said, "We'll keep an eye on her. You're not alone." Then I called my daughter, Margaret. She listened quietly, and when I finished, she said only, I'm coming home this weekend. No argument, no hesitation. And I realized I'd been holding my breath for months. By noon, I was standing in front of the detention center. It looked like a library from the outside, neutral bricks, trimmed bushes, calm. Inside, it was all metal and echo. Doors clanged, shoes squeaked. The air smelled like disinfectant and regret. When they asked who I was there to see, I said my son's name like it was a secret I no longer wanted to keep. They made me empty my pockets, walk through a scanner, and sit in a plastic chair under fluorescent light that made everyone look a little more tired than they already were. When Alan came out, he looked both younger and older. He sat across from me, hands folded, eyes swollen from sleeplessness. "Mom," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." "I know," I said, "and I also know you're not." He swallowed hard. "I was scared." "I was terrified," I said. "There's a difference. One makes a plan that hurts people. The other turns a car around." He looked down at his hands. "They told me if I did one run, we'd be okay." "Who's we, Alan?" "Because I wasn't in that car with you." He didn't answer. Somewhere behind him, a metal door slammed and he flinched. I didn't. "I'll take care of Ellie," I said. "You'll do your part by telling the truth." He nodded weakly. "I'll try." "You won't try. You will." The visit was supposed to last 30 minutes. It lasted 8. Some minutes work harder than others. I left without touching him. Some distances heal better than contact. At home, the quiet felt heavy. I moved the liquor bottles to the top shelf, not because I drink much, but because grief can get thirsty. I put a nightlight in the hallway for Ellie. She said she didn't need it, then asked me to leave the door open. Just a little more. I said okay. I cleaned the garage, swept the corner where Walter's old tackle box used to be. My hands kept reaching for it like memory had weight. I let them ache and didn't argue. At dinner, Ellie pushed peas around her plate. "Can I take Grandpa's picture to my room?" she asked. "The one where he's laughing." "Of course," I said. He liked being where the laughter was. She carried it carefully, holding the frame with both hands, and placed it on her dresser like it was something alive. That night, she woke crying. Not loud, just sharp, like a string snapping. I was there before she reached the door. We sat on the floor together, her small shoulders trembling. "What did you dream?" I asked. "A car," she whispered. "It kept going, and the road didn't end." "It ends here," I said. "With me." We counted things we could see, touch, and hear. We named smells and colors. By the time we reached cinnamon, from the morning toast, her breathing had steadied again. Money, meanwhile, didn't stop needing me. Bills kept coming. I sat at the kitchen table with my checkbook and wrote a new budget like a prayer. Mortgage, groceries, gas, therapy, legal fees. I cut 3 things I could live without and kept the library card, some things you don't let go. I found a child therapist named Dr. Shaw. Her voice was calm, steady, the kind that could talk a wildfire down. She said, "We'll start with play. She'll show us what hurts." In the first session, Ellie built a house out of blocks and parked a toy car in front of it. She spun it in circles, never moving it forward. Dr. Shaw didn't use the word trauma. She didn't have to. She just said, "You did a brave thing bringing her here." I drove home in silence under a sky that couldn't decide whether to rain or not. And I thought about bravery. How it doesn't look like the movies. How sometimes it looks like tuna sandwiches and showing up anyway. The court process was another machine. It ate days and spat out papers. The arraignment was set, postponed, then set again. I wore the same blue dress every time, needing something constant, even if it was fabric. The courtroom smelled like dust and time. Alan stood far enough away that I could see him but not reach him. Amber didn't look at me. I didn't look at her. The prosecutor used words I never wanted next to my son's name: felony, trafficking, intent. Each one chipped away at the man I thought I'd raised. I said nothing unless I was asked to swear to the truth. And I did. Every time. At home, I taught Ellie chess the way Walter once taught Alan. Slow, patient, kind. She liked the knights best. They jump, she said. They don't have to walk like the others. Sometimes the rules bend to let you escape. On Fridays, we baked cookies and brought them to our elderly neighbors, the Johnsons. They cried when they opened the door, not because of the cookies, but because someone remembered them. People want to be seen, even when they pretend they don't. Visits with Alan changed over time. The first two, he wanted reassurance. I didn't give it. The third, he asked for money. I refused. The fourth, he asked for forgiveness as if it were instant. I told him forgiveness is a long road, and I don't own the paving stones. He cried once, quietly, and for a moment I saw the boy he used to be. My heart tried to rise. I told it to sit. Love can stand still. It doesn't always have to rush forward. On the drive home, the radio played a song Walter used to hum while fishing. I pulled over, closed my eyes, and let it finish. Some memories hurt in a way that cleans you. Healing came in small, ordinary places. The grocery store, the post office, church hallways that smelled like old coffee. People would touch my arm and whisper, "We heard." Some offered help. For once, I said yes. Could you take Ellie to soccer? Yes. Could you sit with her Wednesday? Yes. Could you bring that casserole you make when someone dies? Yes. Pride is expensive. Community costs less. At night, after the house quieted, I wrote to myself in a small notebook. Short lines. Simple truths I could stand on in the dark. I did not cause this. I did not deserve this. I will not be defined by this. Ellie's laughter is proof that hope still lives here. Love with boundaries is still love. Sometimes it's the only kind that saves. I kept that notebook in the drawer with the tea towels. Healing should be easy to reach. Then came the custody hearing. The judge had eyes that had seen too much and still searched for the best. My lawyer spoke. Child Services spoke. Dr. Shaw spoke like someone laying blankets over a sleeping child. When it was my turn, I stood and said the facts, the fears, the plan, and the love. I can give her stability. I can give her safety. I can tell her the truth in pieces she can carry. The judge wrote something down, then looked at me like a lighthouse looks at water. Temporary custody remains with the grandmother, she said. Revisit in 6 months. Ellie squeezed my fingers so hard my ring left a tiny crescent moon in her palm. We stepped out into the sunlight. She said, "Can we get French fries?" I said yes. She picked the crispiest ones for me because those are the best. She was right. That night, the house was finally quiet. Ellie drew at the table while I washed dishes. The cat chased a moth across the floor. Nothing dramatic, just life, the kind of ordinary that keeps a world from falling apart. She showed me her drawing. "It's our house," she said. "The magnolia tree is taller now." There was a small figure at the window. "That's me," she said, "because I like the light." "And where am I?" I asked. She pointed at the door. "You're here because you always open it." "Thank you," I said, "for telling the truth." She fell asleep quickly that night. I checked the locks once, only once. I made tea and stepped onto the porch. The stars weren't lessons or metaphors, just bright, stubborn facts. I let them be. My phone buzzed, a collect call from the detention center. I stared at it. Let it ring. Let it stop. I would talk to my son, but not tonight. Tonight belonged to still air and rustling trees, to a girl sleeping without nightmares, to a woman learning that love can be fierce and quiet at the same time. I sat on the top step, wrapped my sweater around my shoulders, and practiced the sound of steady. If you've ever had to hold a family together after it broke, share one small thing that helped. A bedtime ritual, a phrase, a habit. Your story might be the light someone else needs tonight. The summer after everything happened arrived quietly. No big moments, no announcements. Just the soft shift of light through the magnolia tree, and the sound of Ellie's laughter drifting through open windows like a melody I hadn't heard in years. Life had found a rhythm again, slower, smaller, but real. Mornings began with her sleepy footsteps on the hallway floor, and evenings ended with her whispering stories about the stars, as if she were introducing me to old friends. We were learning each other in a new way, not as grandmother and child burdened by loss, but as two survivors rebuilding a map. For the first time in years, I was no longer living in reaction. I was living in choice. The garden became our classroom. We planted tomatoes and mint, and Ellie named every seed we buried. She said names made them feel seen. I smiled at that. Maybe she was right. Sometimes she'd ask questions about things I wasn't ready to answer. "Will Daddy come home soon?" "I don't know," I'd say, which was true. And somehow that answer was enough for her. She was growing into truth gently, the way light filters through lace, soft but undeniable. On Sundays, we drove to the farmer's market outside of town. It was a simple drive, one that used to feel meaningless. Now, every mile felt sacred. The road curved through open fields, past barns that leaned with time, past wildflowers that refused to die in the heat. One morning, as we reached the turn that led to the market, Ellie asked, "Grandma, how do you know which way to go?" I said, "Because I've been lost before." She laughed, not understanding yet. But one day, she will. In late August, a letter arrived. No return address. The handwriting was careful, deliberate. I didn't need to open it to know who it was from. Alan. I placed it on the counter and stared at it for a long time. Part of me didn't want to read it, because forgiveness is heavy, and sometimes silence feels safer. But that night, after Ellie fell asleep, I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table where everything had begun. I opened the letter slowly, as if the words might sting. He wrote about the days inside, about how time felt like water dripping in a cave, steady, cold, relentless. He said he'd been taking classes, that he'd found work in the library, that he'd been thinking about Dad, and me, and Ellie. Then, halfway down the page, his handwriting changed. The lines started to shake. He wrote, "The night before everything, I almost called to tell you the truth. I almost asked for help. But pride can be louder than conscience, and fear makes cowards of sons." I set the letter down, and for the first time in months, I cried without anger. He ended with one last line. "You turned the car around that day. I think you saved all of us, even if it doesn't look like it yet." I folded the letter and placed it inside the same yellow folder that held all the legal papers. It didn't belong there, but it needed to live among the things that changed our lives. That night, I dreamed of driving again. Same road, same gray sky, but this time I wasn't panicking. I wasn't running. The road ended at a lake I didn't recognize, and there was Ellie, barefoot in the water, calling my name with joy instead of fear. I woke up before sunrise, the dream still in my chest like a song half finished. By autumn, small signs of peace began appearing. Ellie's drawings were no longer gray and blue. They were bright again, full of trees, animals, and doors wide open. She joined the school choir. The first time I saw her on stage, singing beneath the gymnasium lights, I realized how far we'd come. I sat there surrounded by parents and the faint smell of cafeteria pizza, and when she waved at me from the risers, I waved back with a lump in my throat and gratitude so large it hurt. After the concert, she ran to me, her cheeks flushed. "Did I sing good?" she asked. "You sang brave," I said. And she smiled, proud of a word she didn't fully understand yet. Weeks later, the lawyer called. Alan's release date was set. He'd serve the remainder in a halfway house. My stomach tightened. Freedom isn't always simple. Sometimes it means facing the wreckage. That evening, I told Ellie gently, "Your dad is coming home soon." She looked up from her drawing. "Will he live with us?" "Not right now," I said. "But maybe one day, if he keeps doing good things." She nodded. "Then we can plant him a tree." The innocence of it, that love can be replanted, nearly broke me. Because maybe she was right again. Maybe roots can find their way even in damaged soil. The day I saw Alan again was colder than I expected. The air smelled like iron and winter. He stood outside the facility gate, a paper bag in his hand, a silence between us that could have filled a canyon. I didn't rush toward him. I didn't turn away either. We just stood there, two people who had finally stopped lying, to each other and to ourselves. He said, "You look good." "You look better," I said. And I meant it. There were lines on his face that hadn't been there before, but there was also something steadier in his eyes, like the storm had passed and he was finally looking for land. He asked if Ellie was okay. I told him she was more than okay. She was healing. And he nodded, eyes wet but clear. "I'm not asking you to forgive me yet," he said. "I just want to say thank you for turning around." I smiled, small but real. "Keep driving forward this time," I said. He nodded, and for the first time in years, I believed him. Months have passed since then. The magnolia outside my window is blooming again. Ellie turned 9 last week. We threw her a small party, just neighbors, friends, and laughter that felt earned. That night, after everyone left, she crawled into my lap and said, "Grandma, I think you're the bravest person I know." I wanted to tell her bravery doesn't always look like standing tall. Sometimes it's shaking and doing it anyway. But I just kissed her hair and whispered, "Maybe you are too." After she fell asleep, I walked out to the porch. The sky was the same color as the day everything changed. For a moment, I could almost hear the hum of the car, the panic in my voice, the echo of my own heart saying, "Turn around." Only this time it didn't sound like fear. It sounded like wisdom. Because sometimes turning around isn't running away. It's choosing the road that leads you home. The world is smaller now, but in that smallness, I found peace. I found rhythm. I found the courage to love my son without enabling him, to raise my granddaughter without fear, and to sit in silence without it feeling like loneliness. Every evening before bedtime, Ellie and I take a short drive around the block. She calls it our loop. She says it helps her sleep better when she sees the streetlights pass by like stars on the ground. And every time we reach the corner where we could turn left or right, she looks at me and says, "Which way, Grandma?" I smile, hand on the wheel, and say the same thing every night. Let's turn around. Not because we're lost, but because sometimes going back is the only way to know you've arrived. We drive home with the windows slightly open, the air cool and honest, the world quiet but alive. Have you ever had to turn the car around in your own life, to walk away, to change direction, to protect your peace? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there may need your courage tonight. And if this story found you when you needed it, subscribe, stay close, and share your voice. Your story matters here. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is turn around and start again.